Becca. Awesome. So, welcome to Arkansas Advocates for Children and Family Kids Count Week at the Capitol, the 2:30 session called Immigrant Rights and Racial Justice in Arkansas. Today's session is described as what can the state legislature do this year to advance equity in Arkansas? We will talk about policies that would move equity forward, policies that would move us backward, and how you can help. My name is Marty North, and I am a proud board member of Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. And Arkansas Advocates coordinates the Arkansas Kids Count Coalition. The theme of this week is advocacy, equity, and social justice for Arkansas kids. So we wanted to make sure that we kicked off the beginning of this week with a discussion on what the 93rd General Assembly here in Arkansas can do to advance equity in our state. Today, we are joined by an esteemed panel, and it is my honor to introduce them one at a time, if they don't mind waving. First, Mr. Thurman Green III, who is president of the Urban League of Arkansas Young Professionals. Ms. Michelle Pedro, policy director at Arkansas Coalition of the Marshallese. Emma Williams Agnew, president of the Craighead County chapter of the NAACP. Rosa Velasquez, who's advocacy coordinator of Arkansas United. And I'm not sure if he's plugged in yet, but I know he was going to join us today, which is Osiris Bali, racial equity coordinator for the Arkansas Public Policy Panel and Citizens First Congress.
He's on.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful. So thank you to all of our esteemed panelists for participating in today's discussion. If at any time, those of you that are attending, if you will please enter your questions into the chat box, we will, as time permits, at the end of our discussion, we will address questions within the Q&A. So please feel free to enter questions inside of the chat feature here on our Zoom call. With that being said, 2020 has been a dynamic year of unprecedented change, and it also provided us with an opportunity for various aspects within our community to have an extra amount of illumination that occurred, especially in the area of racial equity and immigrant rights. So with that, I'd like to kick off our questions, and I'll start with Mr. Green by asking what type of legislation would be helpful in advancing racial equity and immigrant rights in our state?
First, thank you, Marty, for the question, and also thank you to Arkansas Advocates for inviting me to be on the panel today. I think the type of legislation or policies that should be looked at is one where you effectively address the humanity of an individual. I think that is something that we've heard quite a bit through conversations in communities, in the media, so on and so forth, really being able to address the humanity aspect of a person, not focusing on just their education, economic development, the health. What are the key issues that, from a totality perspective, that individuals that we are working with and talking to on a daily basis are needing? And so I think if you have that in mind, as you go and try to advocate or look at different policies, be sure to keep the whole individual in the forefront of your mind and to think about, am I doing everything that's possible to help them be the best person that they can be? And then ultimately they can go out into the state and the community and just be more effective Arkansans. So I think if you're addressing and looking at the totality of a person's humanity, I think that's the type of legislation you should look at.
Excellent answer. Remember the wholeness of our citizens. Michelle Pedro.
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. I think policies that we have to look at the motivation and intention behind those policies. Is it out of fear and, lack of knowledge? Because lack of knowledge creates fear. Or is it out of love and respect and hopefully to better the community? And once we look at, the word unity, it's in the word community. And so we have to put that back in the word community. And so once we come together and just love on each other, we create policies that will further our relationships with each other. We build bridges and then we burn them so fast. And so um, I think instead of burning bridges, we can just put a stop sign and say, hey, come back once you learn something, and hopefully come back with love.
That was amazing. And remember the unity in community. So as we think about our state as a statewide community, always keeping on the forefront, thinking about our why and remembering the unity. Miss Emma Agnew, your thoughts. You're on mute. You're still muted. There you go.
Out on mute. It wouldn't be me if I wasn't. But thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. And I totally agree with Thurman and Michelle as far as coming together and unity and wholeness and all of that. I have a but. And when I look at the current makeup of our 93rd Assembly, 93rd, correct? Yeah, 93rd Congress. We have to first, if we're going to look at unity and love and kumbaya, we have a lot of work to do first, because this 93rd Congress has shown us right away they are not interested in unity and community and all of that. They're not interested in that right now. And so if we're going to go that way, we need to figure out how we're going to get them to come along. Or the plan B is, how do we get things done without the partnership? Because it's going to be very, very difficult. We are going to, as leaders, community leaders, and I'm assuming everyone on here is a community leader in their own right. As community leaders, we have got to figure out a way to get our communities engaged. It's something I struggle with every day. To write compelling messages, to stay up to date on what's going on, to write compelling texts to legislators, and learn how to use that power to encourage legislators to do what they were elected to do. They may be elected by one particular party, but they were still elected to serve the whole state. And so they need to be reminded of that occasionally. And I'll stop there for now.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So the importance of community engagement, community education, so we can empower each other to be engaged and involved, to know that their voices matter. Even beyond the ballot box, that's the beginning. You have to continue with that engagement. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Rosa.
Thank you, Marty. So acknowledging that decision making is often made by those outside of the immigrant community, acknowledging that representation matters. We're seeking to identify and support reforms in Arkansas education, workforce development, public safety policies that would foster immigrant integration and economic development. But we also need to talk about intentionality when it comes to providing dignity and respect to our communities. So we have 4 legislative opportunities that we're pushing for during during this legislative session that we feel could bring a little bit of comfort to our community. And I can go into those later, but dignity and respect, and definitely representation.
Representation and intentionality. Yes. Double, double, triple, quadruple, yes. And I think that's an excellent segue to Osiris.
Hey, good afternoon. The type of policies that I, would like to see, first, policies that empower young people in our community. It's so important to encourage that radical imagination and to encourage our students and our young adults to become the change makers in our communities. And I just think about the values that I want to see in policies: sustainability, respect, and integrity, and continuous improvement in our society. And also always, fostering the diversity and inclusion that we want to see in our communities. So all policies that basically fall along that line, and definitely committed to like racial equity and like sustainability and transparency. So yeah.
Excellent. I like the radical encouragement in building our change agents, and making sure that whatever we are putting in place or advocating for is absolutely sustainable. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to Osiris. What types of legislation would be helpful in advancing racial equity and immigrant rights in our state? Do you have a couple of examples you could speak to?
Well, I definitely got a couple of ideas. I'll say one example that I've seen being filed during the legislative session so far is the Law Enforcement Integrity Act. There's been a lot of talk over the past year about, ways to improve law enforcement, ways to reallocate funds in our communities to actually put forth some of that social change that we want to see. And that Law Enforcement Integrity Act is something that I believe that if we can work as people in our communities, along with there actually being some real honest change in criminal justice reform, to see that that database and that hotline that will report misconduct and corruption, to build some type of trust if they have any hope in their communities of actually having some change, to where law enforcement can be a part of the community and people feel like law enforcement is there not to socially control them, but actually serve and protect. So that's one of the pieces of legislation that I see that could possibly be something that is transformative with that being, if it's passed or if it's actually signed into law. So
That is excellent. Do you remember that bill number by any chance? If you don't, that's okay.
I got it in my email, so I could definitely type it in the chat and say it later. But it's called the Law Enforcement Integrity Act, and I know the sponsor is Frederick Love, Representative Frederick Love. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And that sounds like a very positive piece of legislation that could help to start building a better bridge, as you had mentioned, between the very groups that we're talking about and law enforcement. So thank you for sharing that. Rosa.
Thank you so much, Marty. So I'll give a couple of the examples of the legislative opportunities that we have that we feel that could bring that that comfort to the community. One is professional licensure for DACA recipients and other immigrants. In 2019, DACA nurses enabled more nurses to join the front line in the fight of COVID. Right. So we see 28,000 DACA recipients in the country that are working hard day to day under COVID, protecting our communities. So there's an opportunity here to do the same thing for teachers and substitute teachers. We also have a shortage here in Arkansas now due to COVID, some school districts have had to shut down because they don't have substitute teachers to fill in for the other teachers. So research suggests that one of the biggest indicators of success of a student is race and ethnicity of their educator. So we're hoping that by providing this talent and allowing them to stay here in Arkansas, we will be incredibly successful with our graduation rates, and we could have even more folks join the direct pool of teachers. So the second law that we're trying to change is the eradication of the English only law. We saw during COVID, a lot of the information that was provided by the state was not in any other language other than English. It took the state 6 weeks to be able to translate all of the information, 6 weeks into a crisis, to get this information out to our communities, Latinx and Marshallese. And we saw a big surge. We saw a big surge of folks that got sick. We saw a lot of deaths in the first few months of the pandemic because there was no information. So we're seeking to eradicate the English only law, because that would help in not only in the medical community, but also in the education field and other state agencies to provide their information in other languages other than English. And if COVID brought anything to light, is the inequities that our communities constantly face. We're also looking to eradicate interpretation limitations for elections. One person can only help 6 people during one election. And we need to make sure that folks know what they're voting for, who they're voting for, and it needs to be provided in their language. And then just health equity. The disproportionate impact of COVID on our vulnerable communities has exhibited fatal consequences to all Arkansans. So we're looking for opportunities to help the community be more knowledgeable and be up in the front line as well. But we feel that these 4 opportunities can bring some dignity and respect to our communities, especially during the light of COVID.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful ideas and suggestions. Absolutely impactful recommendations. I'm going to go in the order in which I see you on the screen. Next, Thurman.
Thanks, Marty. So I think an idea, and it's kind of piggybacking off of Cyrus a little bit, is really kind of start at the community level. And it's really about, one, you just got to respect people as people, not automatically assume that they are, guilty of something just because of how they dress or how they choose to speak or music they listen to, so on and so forth. Just really be able to respect them as individuals. And then also with law enforcement, really try to help get them the training that they need, sensitivity training, culture training. And so that they are assigned to work in certain communities, they come in with the mindset of, here's the culture, here are the individuals I'm working with. And so now I can better understand how I can be of an assistance to them, help protect them appropriately, help, increase the overall quality of life in different communities. So really this about, culture sensitivity is what I feel is truly missing, which we saw that a great deal throughout 2020. And so helping individuals to get to the point where they're still doing what's necessary to uphold the law, but they're doing it at a more efficient level and doing it with a greater level of respect. So I think if you add culture training into the overall police training mechanism, I think that will help to cut down, if not eradicate, some of the issues we've seen in various communities that we work with.
Absolutely. Universal acceptance that we are all equally human and worthy of respect, right? And particularly when we're talking about building these relationships with diverse communities, you do need to have some understanding and awareness of the differences that various cultures and communities bring. And difference is not bad. Difference is just different, and different has a lot of value. So thank you so much, Thurman, for that. Michelle.
I also agree with all 3 panelists. With health equity, like Rosa said, we are seeing a lot of people dying, and that's not something we want here. We want people to live healthy lives. And so creating policies that will help people get access to, equity, healthcare equity. That's one thing that I feel passionate about, especially here in Arkansas. Also, racial and diversity inclusion in schools with that one bill that I think Representative Godfrey was talking about, 1218. That's something that I do not agree with. If you don't know what it is, it's, I think it was his name, Mark Lowry. He came up with it. And I think taking out, if it was the context behind it, I don't know why he was for it, to create something about racial exclusion. For me, if he was really willing to have actual facts in education, then he needs to include everything for students to learn in their lessons. History, one, World War II, especially for Marshallese. Here, we were bombed by the nuclear bomb, and then the nuclear testings, and then the nuclear experiments. We weren't just bombed once, we were bombed 67 times, and then we were experimented on. So having those history lessons, it's not to discourage people or create hate. It's just to open up our minds and say, these were mistakes. And so we need to learn from history, and those are facts. If people are coming at history, they're learning, and that's what we want. We want people to learn and actually have that compassion for each other. And I agree with Emma, with community engagement. It all starts from your family and out into your neighborhood, into the community. And so everybody needs to start learning about each other, especially if we want people to come together and learn.
Wow. And I know in our question related to harmful legislation, House Bill 1218 and a few others will definitely be referenced. That's all I'm going to say about that at this moment. But I will definitely agree with you on the importance of truth. And we have a model that is not necessarily inclusive of every group's contributions, their stories in the telling of our history. And we would be a better society and stronger society if we incorporated more narratives of everyone. And I think it would actually help us all with critical thinking and establishing relationships and building that community of unity. Miss Emma.
Remember to unmute. There is so much work to be done in Arkansas. It's pretty overwhelming. But for the purpose of this discussion, I think a couple of pieces of legislation that really needs to be overhauled, and I will agree with it. Mr. Molly that talked about the criminal justice. This whole criminal justice system, I call it criminal injustice sometimes. It just needs an overhaul from start to finish. The way it's set up, the rules and policies governing how people are punished, the length of sentencing, to bail amounts, to policing, and the difference in how people are treated based on race. It just totally needs an overhaul. It's such a mess. We get complaints from the local jail about how our Black men in jail are being treated, and it's just a very frustrating system that sometimes you just feel like there's really nothing that can be done about it. But we all on here, I'm sure, know there is something, but we just have to come together as a group and figure out how to get it done, because that's what change is all about. It's unfair the way it's set up, and I wasn't familiar with the bill that Mr. Molly discussed. I'd be very interested in seeing that bill. And also one that we've gotten involved with at the local level here is the LGBTQ community. And they are seeking protection from discrimination in employment. The state law does not give LGBTQ individuals protection from discrimination in employment at the state level. And so that's something that we need to work on getting changed as well. Cities rather, I'm sorry, are allowed to change it at the local level, but here in Jonesboro and probably other cities as well are reluctant to do so. It's a state bill. So, if you don't want to do it anyway, you always got that excuse to fall back on, that it's state law. It's the way the state law is written. So that's another piece of legislation that we've done a little bit of work on. I'm sure we'll get more into it this year.
That is wonderful. So the arc of justice, still working towards a more just society.
Absolutely.
And definitely we should strive to create environments in which the most qualified are employed, regardless of any other characteristics. Let the quality of the person's talent, education, experience be the driver of employment, and totally wiping out all of these other arbitrary and meaningless things that have absolutely nothing to do with your ability to perform the job. So I thank you for that. And I'm going to deviate, and I'm going to not go and call you out individually, but give you an opportunity to respond in whatever order you would like. Representative Love and Senator Hendren have drafted a hate crime bill. And there's been a lot of coverage of hate crime bills across the country. What would be the impact of passage of this bill or another hate crime bill, as we've heard that the governor is also working on making some adjustments to this bill? And what would it do or mean for Arkansas if we were able to pass a hate crime bill here in Arkansas? And I'll open it to any of our panelists who would like to address. Whoever I see turn the mic off first. Who's my brave person? Thurman, thank you.
So I'll say for that, if, to get two individuals to, who may come from different, political philosophies, come together and say, hey, this particular legislation is what's best for Arkansas, and is best for various groups that have, over the course of history, have always faced some type of injustice, as Ms. Emma stated earlier, or some type of adverse impact based upon, no characteristics that they chose of their own. I think by having this type of policy and legislation in place, one, it says they're valued and they are respected, and that those who may oppose or think differently from how they choose to operate, I think this gives them that support to say, hey, we might not agree on everything, but this particular piece of legislation is about respecting myself as a person, respecting myself as my dignity, respecting my community, respecting my values that I care about most, and to also let them know that you are an Arkansan too. And so I think at this point in our history is about inclusion, bringing people together, let them know that they are valued, they are appreciated, and also putting legislation behind it, so you're not just paying lip service to these communities and individuals. You're actually putting some type of legislative support behind it. So I think now it's about not only talking about what we want to do, but actually putting some type of effort and action behind it, so people know that there are a group of individuals who do support them and will do things to the best of their ability to give them an opportunity to establish quality of life. So that's my answer regarding that question, Marty.
Thank you for that, valuing humanity. And this is one way in which we can demonstrate that we do value all Arkansans here in this state. Michelle, since he kind of tapped into unity, and that just feels like an intro for Michelle to be able to piggyback on.
Yeah, I love that, Thurman, that especially the value and, just respecting ourselves, because we come into this world as cultural beings, and we don't want to forget who we are or our roots, where we come from, what we bring to our home. We also bring outside of our home. And so valuing each other as neighbors, as community members, we see that it will create self-worth and also safety. I think we feel safer when we feel like we're valued in that way. And in that respect, I think a lot of the times with people who don't feel valued, they also feel like their self-esteem and their self-worth is not something to have or to even have or hold. And a lot of the times we feel like we don't belong, and we do belong. We belong in this wonderful world, this wonderful country called United States, but we also belong to each other. And I know it's all kumbaya to me, but it's still, I think, having love and respect for each other, valuing each other is something that's the root for community.
Wonderful. That is so on point. And you hit on a couple of buzzwords that just made me immediately think Osiris should go next. Culture and valuing each other, and our voices being empowered so we feel like we matter and are contributing to the larger narrative. So Osiris, thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Marty. I think one thing we definitely have to do, we definitely have to start promoting inclusion and culture as the norm. And like Michelle was talking about earlier, HB 1218 and 1231, those are two bills in education where they basically want to take out Black history out of their curriculum. And not only that, so much other history that is not stereotypically just mentioned day to day in our textbooks or throughout history. And so we have to figure out a way to start, for one, promoting understanding the culture, diversity, and inclusion, and two, start basically countering hate-producing efforts and start to promote more prejudice reduction. And so I think that right now, after 4 years of whatever we had in the White House, we had a lot of people who were emboldened by hate. And right now, we're seeing a lot of the ramifications of what happens when people who feel empowered by hate speech to the extremes that they will go. And even right now in legislation, you're just seeing a lot of bills that are taking us back to taking a lot of people back to where are we in history right now? Are we taking this back 50 or 60 years from now? Are we going back to an era where, where hate is promoted and hate is tolerated? And so I just think that right now we have to be truthful about our history and work on telling our stories and actually going out there and being about that work that actually combats all of the things that have gotten stirred up here lately. And it's easy to blame the last person in office, but it's a part of America. It's been here. It's nothing that me and my friends are surprised about. The thing about it is news cycle is 24/7 now, and we're seeing it in our faces all the time, so to the point where people can't deny it. So if you thought that you were shocked and surprised by a lot of this domestic terrorism and hate, you have to kind of wake up. But there are ways to promote culture. And, you know, so I believe firmly in the arts being one of those ways, but there's a lot of different ways we can promote culture, arts, and understanding, and eventually reconciliation. So, yeah.
Thank you, Osiris, for that. And what is interesting to note to me is that the hate crime bill is on the legislative priority of our State Chamber of Commerce. So from an economic perspective, big business recognizes the value and importance for the state of Arkansas to have such legislation passed here, that we have hate crime legislation passed. And, you know, Governor Hutchinson has also expressed support in hate crime legislation. I'm going to shift to our next question because it was touched on a few moments ago regarding DACA. How can we reduce the impediments of Arkansans with the DACA status seeking employment in our state, especially in careers where Arkansas is seeing shortages, as was mentioned earlier, whether frontline workers in healthcare or education? Rosa, would you like to speak a little bit more to what we can do?
What we can do is start allowing these folks to practice here in Arkansas. We need to start allowing folks with DACA to have the opportunity to obtain a professional license. In the state of Arkansas, you have to be a U.S. citizen in order for you to obtain any type of professional licensing, whether it's nursing, teaching, engineering, even plumbing and CDL. You're not allowed to obtain one of those professional licenses. So we need to start changing those policies so we can allow folks with DACA TPS. And DACA stands for, thank you, Laura, DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which was an administrative policy change in immigration that started in 2012 under the Obama administration. And this deferred deportation for 2 years. So when you surrender yourself to the government, you are allowed to obtain a work authorization document. With that work authorization document here in the state of Arkansas, you're able to obtain a social security number, which can turn into a driver's license or an identification. So, but yeah, so offering these opportunities to these students, we're losing a lot of talent to states like Texas and Oklahoma that have these policies in place that allow for DACA students, the DACA recipients, to obtain professional licensing. Y'all, we have a shortage of nurses, we have a shortage of teachers, we have shortage of engineers, people of color, and they're leaving us because we are not providing these opportunities in the state here. So yeah, changing the administrative policies to allow these students to stay here would definitely be a great benefit for not only the state, but for everyone.
Thank you. I did not realize that. So thank you. That was a very enlightening moment. I did not realize that all licenses. So that is profound, and that would have a tremendous economic impact on our state as well, to be able to retain talent and to fill unfilled jobs and help grow our economy as well by having full participation of our citizens who live here, our neighbors, to be able to be gainfully employed and strive to their highest ability. So definitely thank you for that education. And I'm going to shift again, unless there's someone else who would like to speak to what we can do in helping individuals with the DACA status in the employment arena. If there are no other comments, I'm going to move to our next question. While there are policies that could move our state forward, what are some bills that will be considered this year that could move us backwards? And I'm going to start with Miss Emma because she brought up one of them. And then Osiris piggybacked and mentioned. So there are two companion bills. 1218, House Bill 1218, which is basically about diversity and equity training within K through 12 or our public funded institutions. This is quickest way I can summarize that bill. And House Bill 1231, which is about making sure that the 1619 project, which is an effort that started by the New York Times to expand the education and awareness of the impact of the chattel slavery system here, the American version, and its long-term, systemic, and deep abiding impact on our country. So there's two bills that were coupled together, and recently the Representative Lowry stated in a television interview that one of the reasons behind this bill is that he did not want any students to feel humiliated by any attempts to interject critical race theory into basically K through 16 education. So, Miss Emma, what bills are harmful? And you are more than welcome to piggyback on those two and add additional ones to the list.
Yeah, for Representative Lowry, I say, yeah. But whatever. But what's really has me weighted down right now is the Stand Your Ground bill that is so close to becoming law in the state of Arkansas that it has to be stopped. We do not want or need a Stand Your Ground bill in the state of Arkansas. As far as that's concerned, nobody needs it, but I live in Arkansas. And so, of course, I'm sure everybody on here, these are community leaders, and some people probably know more about it than I do. But if you aren't familiar with Stand Your Ground, what it does is it gives people permission not to retreat if they have the opportunity to retreat. They may use force, they may use physical force or deadly force rather than retreat. And of course, and I'll be honest, the first time I heard about it was when Trayvon Martin was shot. That was the defense that George Zimmerman used to murder that young man and get off free. And so that's the kind of bill, it has already passed the Senate. They crammed it through so fast. If I'm not mistaken, they did it all in 1 week. But the first week they got in session, if I'm not mistaken. But it was really quick, whatever. It was like it went to the Judiciary Committee, and then it passed the Judiciary Committee, and a couple of days later it had passed the full Senate. So it's out of the Senate, and it is now at the House Judiciary level, which they will vote on it on February the 2nd, which is just next week. And if it gets out of that Judiciary Committee, it's going to pass. It will be law in Arkansas. There is no doubt in my mind that the House is too lopsided. And so what we need to be doing is to keep that bill in the Judiciary Committee of the House. It does not need to, there is no chance if it gets out of the House. I understand there are 3 representatives that could possibly be swayed to vote no on that bill. And we need to be focusing on that. If at all possible, there are, I believe, 11 Republicans and 9 Democrats on that House Judiciary Committee. And so we need at least 2 of those 3 to vote no. And that's a better possibility than trying to get half the House to vote no on it. So that bill just scares me to death. I don't know how to tell you, because we know who feels threatened by whom most often. So it's Black and brown people that people feel threatened by most often. And while they are saying that states that pass this law, crime goes down. Well, that is not true. Crime does not go down, but what is happening, the statistics they use, Stand Your Ground doesn't show them as crimes, because there is a law that said they had the right to shoot you, to kill you. So while that happens, then the statistic will show that homicides go up. You can say crime goes down all you want to, but if you look at the partnering statistics, that shows homicides are going up. And so that argument holds no water. Arkansas has very sufficient and comprehensive self-defense laws that if someone is actually threatening you, you have the right to protect yourself. We already have that. I don't see any need for stand your ground at all. And I'm rambling now. But if you want to do something to stop stand your ground, please, please, please get in touch with your members of Congress and tell them. And I don't have those names right in front of me. I should know them by heart, but I don't. The three that we feel could possibly vote no on this bill. There's been research and they've researched them, and I guess they're more moderate than some of the others. So that's kind of my soapbox. And I know I've taken up enough time, so I'll let somebody else talk about this 1218 and 1231. My understanding on those is that they're just in draft form right now. They have not actually gone to a committee. So if that's incorrect, let me know. But so right now, what's staring down our throat is stand your ground.
You are on point, as I knew you would be. Stand Your Ground is scheduled for the House Judiciary Committee on February 2nd. The committee consists of 12 representatives. 9 of them are Democrats who are against it. 11 are Republicans. We need a minimum of 1, preferred 2, to either vote no or to not vote at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if they need to play the political, position, just don't vote. And the number jumps to 11 if the Speaker of the House decides to attend the committee. So yes, I was there in the chambers during the Senate Judiciary, and it was an amazing time. Let me just say that was amazing. So thank you for sharing. Who else would like to comment on current bills that are known? Because as she pointed out, 1218 and 1231 have not been scheduled for a committee yet that I'm aware of. And we know this is early in the session, so there could be other potential harmful bills also planned. So would anyone else like to speak to known harmful bills that have been filed?
Yeah.
Sure, Thurman.
I think the bills that we know of, I look at those as roadblocks. We're in the 21st century, and we are expecting our children, our communities to know a wealth of knowledge about a lot of things, and to go and be productive leaders and being able to go into different spaces to be effective, be able to get things done. I think from that perspective, when you think about what's currently out there, we are, based on what we're requiring and would like to see of our future children, our leaders, that stands as a roadblock to their success and their ability to make things happen and to be the leaders that we're counting on them to be. And so it's critical that an individual understands the totality of information, whether good or bad. They know what's out there, and so they have that context in mind, so that when they do go create programs or be leaders of various agencies, they have not only that compassion that we need, but also the intellectual awareness that they can effectively work on the behalf of various communities that they're working on, because they have the entire picture that they're working on versus only a certain portion of it that is, glorified or happy. Like, the world is not going to give you, uh, a small piece. They're going to give you the entire thing. And your job is going to be, how do I figure out how to make this work? How do I take this information and turn it around to where it will be a benefit to those that I'm working with? So, I'm very cautious about that, putting roadblocks in front of our children, our future leaders, because we need them to be well-rounded. And so those are my thoughts on that.
Well, just coincidentally, I'm seeing a lot of social media posts that the Urban League of the state of Arkansas is using with defining Arkansas values. Who do we want to be as a state? And we often use that term a lot, you know, Arkansas values, Arkansas values. But what exactly does that mean? And so I think messaging around the very things that we've been talking about today is important, and that the bills that we see are an expression of what we value here in the state. Anyone else want to add commentary before I can open it up to a few questions that are coming into the chat box? What other bills that have been filed that you feel are harmful for immigrant communities and towards the cause of racial equity? Osiris?
Yes, definitely. I want to definitely say we definitely need to post Stand Your Ground SB 24. Definitely hit up your House Judiciary Committee and let them know that you oppose it. You know what I'm saying? Be polite, be courteous, share your personal story, but let them know that, you know, we got good self-defense laws in Arkansas, and it's a non-solution to a non-existent problem. So, you know, there's no need for stand your ground here in Arkansas, period. But I also want to mention, there's a bill filed by Representative Underwood, House Bill 1223. It's called Back to Blue, Act to Back to Blue. And basically, it's a very short bill, about a 2-page bill, but it basically says that if any city decides to defund a municipality, in particular the police, if you decide to defund the police, then those funds can't be reallocated to the city's budget to any program or any activity in the city. Now, some understanding more of the bill, they're talking about funds that the state provide or just city budget period or county budget, whatever. But it's basically a bill that's being brought up right now in the heat of the moment with everybody being so frustrated with the phrase defund the police and how you can reallocate the budget. Well, if you don't like the phrase defund the police, I propose a new phrase, unbundle the police. A lot of us got internet and cable packages and all that type of stuff. And when it get too high, you know, we start taking away from, you know, let me turn off this phone, let me take off this service or whatever to bring down your bill to where you need it to be so it fits your budget. Well, if you can't unbundle the police and provide and reallocate those funds to community programs that actually really need them, then you're going to see an effect to where people are going to start to want to increase the police department and law enforcement budget. So I feel like the state should not be involved in any city's budget. The people in the city decide that budget, city councilmen, and those are the people that we should pay attention to and try to figure out our budgets with. We shouldn't be talking to people, legislators, about places that they don't even live at. So House Bill 1223, I definitely don't believe that, you know what I'm saying, that you should withhold money from the city when they decide to reallocate funds.
Thank you for sharing that. You put another bill on our list of bills to be mindful of and aware of. Are there any other bills that are known of that have been filed that are harmful at this point, Rosa?
Marty, there has not been an anti-immigrant bill yet. It's the second week of the legislature. We are expecting these bills to come because we've seen how much hate-filled, we've seen in the first 2 weeks. I know that in 2019, there was one that was filed and it passed and it became law last year. So we are expecting. We don't have any yet. But we're going to need your support with these because we cannot be the only immigrant advocacy organization that's speaking out against these. There's power in numbers. So just as we are advocating against all of these crazy bills that are coming, and just as we're advocating for these good bills, we need to make sure that we are all contacting our legislators, communicating with them. Like Osiris said, don't be afraid, be courteous, let them know why this is harmful for you, because the more that they hear from their constituents, constituents, y'all, at the end of the day, they work for us. And if they receive more calls against, then they're probably prone to vote against it. So that's one of the points that we got from the legislators that we talked to, is make sure that you're communicating, make sure that you're emailing on a daily basis, because we're not able to be present at the Capitol. They need to hear us. They need to hear from us, whether it's by text or by email. So just making sure that we have that constant communication with our folks. But as soon as we see something out there, we'll definitely let you all know. Follow Arkansas United Facebook page, because that's where we keep up all of the updates.
Wow. Just as I had suspected, this was going to be such a powerful panel that time was going to get by us so quickly. And I'm looking at the clock going, oh no, we've only got about 5 minutes left. And I've been seeing a variety of comments and posts and links and resources kind of pop up. Rebecca, is there a question in the chat that we should pose to the panel?
There's been a lot of discussions. There have been some questions. Michelle has one for Rosa. What can people do to advocate around the licensure issue?
Thank you, Rebecca. So one thing that we could do is, again, contact your legislators. Right now, we're working with Representative Godfrey, and we're looking for other sponsors. Now, unfortunately, today is my last day with Arkansas United, but I have some amazing colleagues that are on here. I have Miriam, I have Carla, and I have Sarai. So if you want to join the DACA teachers campaign, if you want to join the other campaigns, send us an email. It's and I'll put them in the chat so you can have those contacts. But for now, joining our campaigns, we had last week we had Representative Godfrey join us, and she told us what some of the points that we were going to put on the that she was thinking about putting on the bill, and then from the community we heard some other really good points that she wanted to add on there as well. So we don't have a bill number for any of our 4 proposals just yet, but again, I'll put the emails addresses for my colleagues in the chat, and you can email them, and then they can add you to the campaigns.
Thank you so much for that. Rebecca, is there another?
Yes, Miriam wants to know what representatives should people contact around this Stand Your Ground bill?
I can't remember all three that are currently looked at, but I know Representative Jimmy Gazaway is one of the individuals, and Laura, she just put the other names in the chat as well. So I think we can provide that to the audience afterwards, but I definitely remember Representative Jimmy Gazaway as one of the individuals.
Yeah, I can get the other 3 names real quick. I won't try to give the contact information. If you can either go to the Arkansas legislative page and get them, or we can put them in the chat. But it's Stan Berry, Carol Dalby, Dalby, and Keith Slape, Slape.
Thank you for that. And when we're engaging in this also important mobilization effort, and thinking about each one of those representatives, please lean into which area, which district they represent, and try to mobilize particularly people in their districts, because they tend to respond more favorably if it's individuals in which they represent. I can tell you, if I go to a representatives in rural Arkansas and I live in Little Rock, I don't know how much attention they will give to that because I'm not their constituent. So not saying don't, I'm just saying making sure that we have people that are from those actual communities that they represent. They need to hear from them as well. We're at 3:29, Rebecca. Do we have time for one more?
A lot of the rest was just discussion and people sharing information.
Wonderful. So the information that has been contained, or that is within the chat currently, if there are resources and things like that, Rebecca, can they reach out to advocates to get this information that's in the chat, or how can people get the names and links and other resources that may have been referenced or included in chat?
We'll be sending a follow-up email, one email for the whole event, or for the whole Kids Count Week. And we'll include some resources in there.
Excellent. Well, it looks like our time has come to such a quick close. I'd like to thank each one of our dynamic and wonderful panelists for their time, their sharing of their experience, their passion, and thank you for everything that you're doing in our communities to make Arkansas a better and safe and more just and equitable space. On behalf of Arkansas Advocates for Children and Family, thank each and every one of you who participated today. And it was truly my honor and privilege to have facilitated this session. This concludes this particular session. I hope you will register for other events scheduled this week. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until we are able to meet again, take care. Bye.